Hello Expert Nation, this is Dr. Travis Andrews, your facilitator for thenatlas.org and the evidence-based trade-off mapping applied to Twitter. I've been given some feedback that it's too complicated, so if you're not understanding it, the feeling is widespread. This video is to briefly look at what the analysis is and what it is not, and let's go from there. Okay, let's start with an analysis of PBS. Thenatlas.org has a report on our website. It says the PBS community is on a trajectory of diversification. So what does that mean? Well, we start off with a lengthy disclaimer. The gist of it is this is an opinion only. If you don't like what this says, please ignore it. So the ability to capture attention is truly valuable. And here we have a map of how attention and engagement change through time. Different colors indicate different areas on this map, and the purple line indicates how the community is changing, the journey through different characteristics of discussion. So those characteristics are resilience, expansion, revolution, resistance, contraction, and disruption. And the easiest way to think about this is by making a comparison to personal fitness. So we can go to the gym and we can go lift weights. We can go deadlifting. And the more weight you lift, the better. So that is an example of an expansion trajectory. So you lift more weights. And if you go to the gym and you start lifting less weights, that would be an example of contraction. That's not generally desirable. And so these characteristics are already well understood, and they're mapped by Twitter themselves. So you can find these characteristics in things like the number of followers or the engagement rate or impressions. And so the more, the better. But there's more to being in good physical fitness than just how much weight you can lift at the gym. So the resistance trajectory would be comparable to something like running. So running is all about endurance and efficiency. And the opposite on this graph is resilience, and that's maybe more akin to something like yoga. So there it's about flexibility, trying new things, keeping it interesting. Finally, we have the revolution trajectory, part of this mapping, and that would be analogous to combining all of these different physical fitness activities, such into something like rock climbing or ballroom dancing. And so ballroom dancing takes endurance and takes flexibility, it takes trying new things, and it takes strength. So that, I think, is the best analogy for this mapping. Also, there's disruption. And disruption is a hard one to talk about. The movie Inside Out did a nice job of explaining why we need things like disruption in our life. I think that the best analogy for the fitness example would be that a disruption is sort of practicing or trying new things, and so it's not always fun. Sometimes you fail, but it's a learning opportunity. So it's an important part of this mapping, and going through a disruption trajectory can and often is part of a revolution. In that revolution can also be considered innovation, and so there's something called disruptive innovation. And in that, because you're doing something new, you actually are disrupting the old things that currently occur. Okay, so PBS moves through a bunch of these trajectories. It doesn't go through expansion and contraction, which is interesting in that the traditional metrics of followers and impressions probably aren't changing so much for PBS, but that doesn't mean that its community fitness isn't changing, so the combination of other characteristics. And so we've got a few example tweets topics here. So for the resistance trajectory, we have a topic here that refers to the Ken Burns series on the Vietnam War, whereas the resilience trajectory, should pop up here in a second, talks about first civilizations. So one of the comments that would be interesting here is, how does the Vietnam series different from the first civilization series? And in the endurance versus diversity logic, you might consider first civilizations to be a new topic that they're exploring, whereas the Vietnam War is a deeper look into something that's already been discussed many times on PBS, and their community is already well engaged and very knowledgeable about the Vietnam War. Interestingly, the revolution trajectory talks about at Nas and the NSO tweets, I believe it was. Wait for that to pop up again. At hashtag NajPBS, which I believe was a combination of orchestra and rapping. And so that's a really interesting and probably strong example of what a revolutionary trajectory is, where you're combining different things to create something new that really reverberates well with the Twitter community. And please remember, this is just the Twitter community we're discussing here. Okay, and so we can convert these overall trajectories into something we call community fitness. So the community fitness is just a single metric number, and here we have a typical graph with an x-axis, which is time, and a y-axis, which is community fitness, this number. And so the number is shown on how it changes through time as this golden line, this thick yellow line. And we can see it sort of peaks around the winter of 2017-2018, and then it slowly declines until present day, so summer 2018. And the error bars are quite large. The confidence interval for the community fitness is quite large, and that's shown in the yellow blob in the background, particularly as we transition from winter through spring. And the thin yellow line that sort of overlaps the thick yellow line is also community fitness, but at a much higher resolution, so a much higher time frequency. Purple line is fullness. This is analogous again to followers or impressions, and we can see for PBS the fullness through time doesn't change too much. It's dipped a little bit this summer. And so the question that we pose to viewers, readers of this report, is what could be going on here? So we can map the community fitness measure, which is based on trees in a forest, and we can find tweets that are associated with the change in community fitness, but what is actually going on? And so, I mean, the few obvious things that I would point out as a reviewer of this, I would say, well, the dip towards summer for PBS could be simply just the change in seasons. So winter and spring and fall are particularly strong seasons for PBS, where they're releasing new shows. The Great British Baking Show just ended. If you haven't seen that, it's one of the best cooking reality shows, in my opinion. That ended. I'm sure there's continues to be lots of shows on PBS, but the big hits that really get people interested, I'm not sure there's any playing right now. And I believe they're starting up again in the fall. So this is similar to the example from football. So the sport football has specific seasons, and in the off season, the community fitness tends to decline because the fans just aren't as revved up because there's nothing happening. They're not playing any games. And so we might consider this decline in community fitness just to be essentially the off season for PBS. Alternatively, and it's always good to have lots of ideas, alternatively, Trump's war on the liberal media could be playing out here. So I think PBS tends to be a little more liberal than other stations, and so as the liberal media is bashed, maybe less people are tuning in. Well, that's not true. So the fullness is about the same, slightly declining. What was that, about 1.5% decline. So the average people tuning in is probably about the same, at least based on Twitter. But the quality of the conversation is declining. So maybe the conversation has changed from being a rich exploration of topics based on from PBS to more defending PBS as right to exist. So that's what we'd like to hear from people that know PBS and people that interact with PBS. So please leave your comments below. So finally what we've done is we've extracted a few individual tweets from the analysis. So we have some example tweets that would be considered vibrant. So these are just pulled out. It's really hard to pin vibrant community discussion on just one tweet. It's not meant to be. This isn't what this is meant to be used as. But I think it can help us understand what's going on with each topic. So vibrant tweet examples reference the hashtag Vietnam War on PBS, reference Puerto Rico, hashtag Puerto Rico, and I believe that was after Hurricane Maria, yes. And final one is the administration's budget proposals eliminate federal funding for public media. So these are all very near and dear topics to viewers of PBS, very involve caring about other people and thinking about the longevity of public media and how it interacts with communities. And so if we contrast that to in-transition tweets, now it's important to note that this isn't bad. In-transition is in no way less good than vibrant. But we can see that these tweets talk about Facebook and political ads, immigration, and ballistic missile threats. So these are very, let's see, what's the word? So these are, I mean, they're a little bit scary. So we've got giant corporations like Facebook and influencing political situations. We've got immigration, which is near and dear to all of our hearts, but it's a very difficult topic to discuss. And we've got ballistic missiles, which have the potential to kill millions of people. So yes, so the question is what exactly makes these different? Is there a difference, and what is that difference? And so the analogy for in transition, as I said, it's not bad, it's just different. I guess the analogy would be what's better, a farm or a forest? So I am very biased towards forests. I like trees, but if I was trying to feed a town, we'd need farms, unless you happen to be in the Amazon and you can forage for forest products. But if I was trying to build a house, a forest would be better. So these are different situations, and it depends on what you're looking for to see what is most valuable. So forests and farms have just different qualities, as do vibrant and in-transition tweet examples. Okay, so that's the end of the report. We have a little bit just discussion of the overall thenatlas.org, and of course there's quite a bit more on the website, so please check that out. And please leave your comments. That's really the key to this all working, is that we need to understand, because you are the experts, I'm just the facilitator applying this potentially valuable analysis method. We need your feedback to understand if this analysis is telling us anything useful. Okay, thanks everyone.